The secret to our 20s and why it can feel so overwhelming and exciting is the fact that we are all making it up as we go. And that's exactly what forced me to level up my life. Keeping everything simple, let's dive into that. Welcome back to the Keeping Everything Simple podcast. I'm your host and fellow student, Michael Klukas, and on this show, we boil down complicated topics into simple, actionable tips. If you have your whole life figured out by the time you turn 20, then I congratulate you because that is an impressive spot to be in. Now, if you're more normal like me, you probably didn't, and that is perfectly okay as well. That's something I just want to stress right now. But the reason I leave with that is, starting off with this segment of the show, the complications. There is a lot that gets thrown into our 20s that can make it, like I said, feel very overwhelming. But there's a lot of good that comes out of it too. And so we're starting that off with this understanding that your 20s are a period of exploration and laying the groundwork for the rest of your life. For myself personally, I saw this as a transition point. It's a step into your full young adult life where you're no longer in a more structured environment. And that's why I mean your 20s are time for exploring still, but also laying groundwork that is going to help you in the future succeed when you're 30, when you're 40, when you're 50. And that's why, as we're exploring, it's so helpful to be able to see how our interests are kind of going to guide us throughout the course of our 20s. And again, it's very annoying, especially as we graduate from one milestone, to instantly be asked, what are we doing next? Because there's a lot more of us that just simply don't know. We simply don't know what road we're going to go down, or even if we have an idea, it's just an idea and it's not this fully formulated plan that people might be looking for. And as I said earlier, it's so many transitions happen during this time as well, where when it's high school, it's where are you going to college? Are you going to college? What are you doing next? When you graduate university, it's what's the next job? What's your major? What's your internship? It's just so many questions. And the problem that comes is overwhelm. There's too many options almost. There's endless options that we have that we can choose from, that we can choose to be, choose to pursue. And there's so many narratives that are invading our lives at that point. Whether that is what our parents want us to do, whether that is what our best friends want us to do, our grandparents want us to do, whatever that is, our previous passions want us to do. There's so many narratives, and there's so much that it can be the cause that makes us freeze. Decision paralysis, this idea that there's always something new, there's always something better. And that's hard. That is not easy because that means we have to juggle so many options, so many routes that if we don't know exactly where we want to go, we may feel that we're falling behind. We may feel that we aren't living up to our potential, or that we, for some reason, are letting someone else down because we don't have this clear cut, I'm going to do this and it's going to be great mentality. But in that lies, again, opportunity, because if we're able to zone in on just choosing a direction, that can make it so much easier for us to then kind of tune out some of these other narratives and actively go in a direction and see and test if that's what we want to do, if that's the route we want to explore. And I think that's, again, going to be the most powerful thing for us, is even though it's messy, even though there's so much that can happen, if we are able to choose something and stick to it a little bit better, it's going to be much easier to take that next step. Real quick, if you're watching us on YouTube and enjoying this, make sure that you subscribe down below, as well as give this episode a like. It helps us out so much. If you're listening to us on a podcast app of choice, make sure you leave us a rating and give us a follow. It will help grow the show and share it with other people just like you. Let's dive back in. The other thing here is that the transition from teenager to young adult isn't exactly flawless, where not all of us handle that transition well. Some people may have had a very strict upbringing and they go off the rails when they go away for the first time. Some of us may have had a more flexible upbringing, and when we get into our young adult lives, we may transition well, or we may also completely go off the rails. It's kind of a up in the air type of chance thing. But there's also then this reminder that we have to have is that we are experiencing a smaller part of the world still, but it's bigger than what we came from. And there's so much more that's out there that we may accidentally limit ourselves when there's a bigger world to explore. And that's what also makes that transition a little bit rocky, is that sometimes, again, this endless options, endless opportunities can lead us to personally limit ourselves to what we know, what we're comfortable with, and not grow outside of our comfort zones. And that's something that we have to be aware of. And those around us have to be aware of, is that, again, we're all just figuring it out. And I mean this honestly and truly, that we are just trying to get by at points. And even if we have long-term goals, long-term visions, we still got to go through day by day. We still got to figure out, what are we doing today and how is that going to help tomorrow? And that's why, again, that transition can be so hard, because even as teenagers, we may still be more short-sighted than our 24-year-old future self. I'm 24 now, and I can definitely say that my 18-year-old self was much more short-sighted than I am today. And that's something that we just have to rely on others for, and also look inwardly and have an honest conversation with ourselves of, how did we transition to our young adult lives, and are we still pursuing something of interest? Are we still choosing a direction and being able to adjust as needed? So comment below, did you know exactly what you wanted to do out of high school or college? And has that changed or gotten even more clear a few years down the line? Let me know in the comments down below. And with how messy our 20s can be, let's move on to the conflict segment of the show. So because the transition between our teenage lives and young adult lives is going to be filled with plenty of ups and downs, this can cause so much uncertainty, and that's perfectly valid. I want to stress that again. That is valid. Now, we go from structure to pretty much open freedom. What I mean by this is, when you go to high school to college, you are getting much more freedom. Even if you go to a religious college like I did, or a Christian university like I did, there's still a lot more freedom you have experienced there than you would have when you were in high school living under someone else's roof. You're kind of on your own. You're getting to do this trial run of, wow, I am here maybe in a new city. I highly recommend doing it in a new city. And I am experiencing so many new things, meeting so many new people, and the structure is a lot more freeform. There's a lot more that you have choices in. And then as you go from college to work, that's when you kind of realize that time really is an illusion. It's the fact that you're actually in control of it to a much greater extent than before, because while you're in university, then it is, you have classes, you got homework, maybe you have study groups, you got things to do with friends, but your time is still compact and structured, because you know you have assignments to do, you know you have projects to turn, you know you have group projects to work on, people to coordinate with, papers to write. Time is still dedicated towards stuff. But that transition from university or college to your work life, then that's when you realize, oh wow, there's a lot more of it than I realized, and also a lot less of it than I can actively use. It's a weird little paradox here. But that's where having these time management transitions is so important, that we don't let this open freedom and open creativity become something that hinders us as we go forward. Because if you have someone that you know personally, and you probably do, that sucks at time management, you're like, wow, I don't know how I ever see you or how you make time to do XYZ, but you got to figure that out. And that just may be that transition period of, again, time being so much more freeform, but because it's entirely within our control, we don't always do the best, most logical thing with our time. And then also, that leads us into the next piece here, where it's like we can also get hit by the feeling like there's too much to do and not enough. Same goes with time. There's also so much that we want to do in terms of the pillars in our lives. We may want to really go to the gym, get our fitness in order because we were really fit during college, and then we have a work bod now, which I'm going to phrase that the work bod, because like if you end up going from super active to having like a sit down office job, it might happen. Freshman 15 was a thing. I feel like the new job 15 might be a thing too, where you just put on like 15 pounds. But ultimately, you're going in and realizing that, okay, I want to like focus on like the fitness pillar of my life. I want to make sure that I am having enough time for my family and then also for my friends. If you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a partner, it's also like, oh, I got to make sure that I have time for them too, because that's important. And then you want to make sure that you have time for your hobbies. And then you need to make sure that you're carving out time for work. And then it just feels like there's not enough. And that's stressful. That's perfectly stressful and perfectly understandable. Because there's so much that we have control over, so much that we know we can do, that it feels hard when we realize, oh, we actually can't do all of them perfectly, but we can give our best to each of them. And that's also where the paradox of choice comes in. Everything in life today is a choice. If I choose to grab fast food on my way home rather than cooking a meal, that's a choice. If I choose to film this podcast, for example, rather than going to the gym at, 6 in the morning right now, the time I'm filming this, that's a choice. Everything becomes a choice. And we actually have so much access to information now that we are subject to information overload, like a lot of it, because we always have this window into someone else's life, this window into what people say we should be doing right now, what we wish we were doing right now, that the grass always appears greener on the other side. And that's where this struggle comes in, because again, the paradox of choice is that there's too many options. There's too much. And decision paralysis adds another layer of uncertainty, because we then have to ask ourselves, did we make the right choice? Are we making the right choice? And for anyone listening to this now, that is something that we will likely all experience at one point or another, and that's okay. How we deal with that also is something that is going to be super important. And I'll get into that a little bit later on, but that's something that we are struggling with. There's the paradox of choice and then decision paralysis, and it just piles on more and more as we get, again, a glimpse into what everyone else is doing. And that's also why not all of us are naturally prepared to jump into the bigger world. Now, I am not using the term real world, quote unquote, because that is annoying. And school is a part of the real world. Like, I'm going to emphasize that. And it sounds super janky, but the thing is, when you go off to university, that is you stepping into the real world. That's you stepping into your first job, potentially. People may be getting those work studies, doing work on campus. That's when you're meeting people for the first time, which you will do when you go to a new city. You will meet people for the first time. You are stepping into what is the start to the real world. That's why I don't like that term. But some of us are more naturally prepared for it, because maybe we, again, our context, our situations, our upbringings prepared us to feel like we could jump in and feel okay with it. Or maybe we're experiencing so many new things in our 20s that we just want to go on this period of exploration. And that's something that I highly encourage, but it's just something that we have to realize is that that's going to impact how we transition into the next phase of young adulthood. And that's because some experiences lend themselves much better to creating that openness to new experiences in our 20s. And it's exactly that openness that helped me level up, because I had to be decisive. So let me tell you how in the final section here, simplified actions. So the next best thing doesn't have to stop me from making a decision. And that was what was key for me leveling up my life once I got out of university, because I graduated university early. I graduated university when I was 20. Normally, if you're doing 4 years of university, you will graduate by the time you're 22. So here I am graduating 2-3 years early, and I had to make choices much sooner and be decisive because I couldn't let decision process and overwhelm get to me. So the decision was to not always look at the other side. I'm not like peeking over the fence. If you see me on camera, if you watch this on YouTube, just my little peek here. But no, I'm not always looking at the other side to see, oh, what's someone else doing? What is so-and-so doing? Like, what's their life look like? No, instead, I am picking a side. I'm picking a decision and then choosing to stick with it because I can always change course. That's the important part here. I had to make a decision to at least set the wheel in motion because an object in motion will stay in motion. And that meant if I chose a direction, I could actively make progress. And then when I was ready, and if I needed to, I could adjust. I could change the course a little bit and get more in alignment with what I want to do, having gained some experience. And then I was also considering those decisions as little markers along my route where I could look back and say, okay, I chose to do this. Why? I chose to do that. And how did it get me to where I am today? And how can I look back and use hindsight being 2020 and see what that ultimately led me to do? So that was why the first thing that helped me level up so much was being able to make a decision and not look to the other side and see if the grass was greener. The second thing was then that picking what you think aligns with who you are, test it, learn about it, and then adjust it. That goes back to, again, that first thing of choosing a side. But the alignment piece became so important because it was less about me saying, okay, I need to do this because this is what someone told me to, or I need to do this because this is what my parents had always told me to do. Instead, it became, I want to do this because, hey, I found out I really liked this while I was in college and I want to dive into this a bit more. Hey, I wanted to start a business. Maybe I really want to try this out because what do I have to lose while I'm 20? But we are still being formed in our 20s. And so we should explore avenues that are interesting. And again, I don't mean throwing caution to the wind here and not preparing the rest of your life, but I mean figuring out your interest and exploring them with the mindset that you can always kind of self-correct as you get further down the line. And again, I want to emphasize this does not mean that you, throw responsibility out the window, but you are picking a route to try it out. Kind of dip your toes in the water, if you will. And this helped me find good options for work where I could experiment and define what success actually meant for me rather than what it meant for someone else. So that was the other thing, picking alignment and then being able to adjust as I learned. And then understanding, this is something that was very important, you can't control what you can't control. That sounds woo-woo. I'm going to dive into that. So this sounds obvious, of course, as well, but the real struggle here is that we can sometimes forget this. We sometimes forget that not everything is going to bend to our will and we're going to be able to choose what we want to do. Because again, college, we had a bit more optionality and we were able to pick and choose what we want to do, our classes, assignments sometimes, but there was structure. And then get into the workforce, then we're like, all right, now we have to pick and choose what we want to do with our free time. There's no structure, but also we can't control things that might suddenly happen. We may get called into work suddenly because there's a work emergency. We may get a call from our friends because they need help with something, but we can't control everything. And that's something that we have to recognize and have to remember that if we're able to focus on what is within our control, we're going to be a lot more at peace with our decisions. And that also led to like worrying less about the future, which sounds counterintuitive when I'm talking about future planning, but it's focusing on today, doing what really matters, the needle moving projects, that needle moving work, where we're going to find so much more value, and not focusing on the what ifs of like, what if this happens? That's not in your control. What if that happens? That's not in your control either. And so worrying less about it, but still having that long-term vision, that long-term goal was what made it so much better for me to say, all right, cool. I can't control if I'm going to get this promotion or not, but I can control if I'm going to still do a great job and get a raise. And then it was also dedicating myself to doing good work that I could actually control and create results for. And this again goes back to this idea of there's value in doing a job well done. There is satisfaction in putting your full self into something and creating results that you're proud of. And so that's where you are generating control, but around things that matter to you, things that you actively want to have control over and that you want to feel proud of. And so that's what helped me so much in leveling up, because then I could realize that, hey, I don't need to actively control everything. I don't need to feel like I have to have the perfect understanding before I make a decision. It was just giving up the control of things that I knew I couldn't influence and focusing on what mattered to me and what was actively gonna move that needle towards where I wanted to go in the future. And ultimately, I'm still figuring things out. I'm still making it up as I go day by day. I want to emphasize that. That's what's happening. I'm only 24. I don't have my whole life figured out. And that's okay. However, by being more decisive and approaching this chapter of my life from this kind of lens of exploration and learning, that's going to help me get closer to the picture I have for my future. So even if I'm still figuring out, I still have something I want. And I know that. And I believe you guys do too. You probably have something that you want and you know what it is. And it may be scary to want to take that jump and say, I can make it happen versus I don't know if I can make it happen. But I encourage you that if you get decisive on a few key areas of your life and adjust your strategy as you go, that will level up your life as well. You will find you are in much more control than you realize. And at the same time, you will have so much more fun because you are trying to align yourself with what matters most to you and finding ways to make the adventure enjoyable and just have a good time exploring, adjusting, and understanding who you are in your 20s before you figure out who you are in your 30s. But comment down below if you're watching this on YouTube, what's something that you want to be decisive about in your life right now? While you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. It helps me out so much. Don't forget to turn on notification bell so you know every time that a new podcast episode comes out. I post every single Friday. If you are listening to us on a podcast app of choice, leave us a rating and a follow. It helps me out so much and stokes my 24-year-old ego. But I really do appreciate it. And you can also share the podcast with other people who you think might enjoy it. But with that, keeping everything simple. Have an amazing day, you amazing people, and I will see you all in the next episode. Go out there and do great things.